Hi everyone, I'm Bobby Cochran. This is for Theater 344, Costume Design with Heather Tomlinson. I just finished my early 1960s research for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. This is my quick walkthrough of what I researched, what surprised me, and how it's already shaping my costume choices. Project Frame. Play lives in a very specific window. Early 1960s, New England academia, and it starts around 2 a.m. after a faculty party. That timestamp is everything because it tells us the characters are still dressed for public, but they're running out of energy to keep forming it. What I was trying to solve with research, I wasn't looking for cute 1960s outfits. I was trying to answer, what does respectable, educated, campus-adjacent cocktail culture look like when it's been worn too long, drunk too hard, and dragged toward dawn? And how do I show status, control, and unraveling without costume changes? Research method. I organized my sources into primary and secondary research. Primary sources gave me direct evidence like photos, catalogs, and extant garments. Secondary sources gave me interpretation and context like fashion history timelines and scholarly writing. And I deliberately avoided using film versions or other productions as design answers because the point is to build original designs and design decisions from evidence. Primary sources I leaned on. A few of the big ones for me, 1962 catalogs for mainstream silhouettes and accessories, period photography for how clothing was actually worn, and museum collections for construction and materials. The primary sources helped me see that early 60s fashion still carried late 50s structure, but it was starting to simplify, loosen, and point toward what the decade becomes later. Secondary sources I used context. The secondary sources helped me name what I was already seeing. The ladylike, polished look still dominates early in the decade with youth culture, rising underneath it, and social rules still doing a lot of heavy lifting, especially in academic spaces. That's perfect for this play because these characters are basically social rules with legs until the rules collapse. What research revealed about early 1960s style? Here's the headline. The early 60s are structured, coordinated, and extremely invested in looking appropriate. Women's silhouettes often read as chic, shift, and tailored suits with contoured grooming and accessories. Men read as conservative suits or sports coats, pale shirts, narrow ties, polished shoes, and a kind of professional uniform. It's not that individuality doesn't exist, it's that individuality is forced to dress like it has a job interview tomorrow. The detail that changed my honey design. Honey clicked for me when I focused on social performance. She's the most invested in being seen as nice, correct, and presentable. So I wanted one accessory that screams, I'm trying very hard to be the kind of woman who belongs here. That's why I'm adding gloves for Honey. Gloves show up repeatedly in early 60s ladylike styling, especially paired with small handbags and polished, coordinated looks. They signal that she's dressed for approval, not comfort. This is the kind of period evidence that makes the gloves feel grounded instead of random. And emotionally, gloves also work because they're a subtle barrier, like she's trying not to touch the messiness of the night with her bare hands. How that affects Honey's arc through the night. Honey starts photo ready, always. She has a small clutch purse, a compact, and lipstick she thinks she's applying discreetly. Her hair is controlled, likely an updo that's designed to serve public scrutiny. But as the night goes on, the gloves can come off, the lipstick gets less precise, the hair starts to loosen, and suddenly she's not an image anymore. She's a person. The Martha question, fabric and status. Martha is power, privilege, and provocation all in one body, in one room at 2 a.m. Originally, I was leaning satin for her dress because satin is flashy and it can feel aggressive under lights. But based on research and the fact that this play is lit like Late Night Truth, I'm switching her back to black crepe. Crepe gives me a much richer and expensive looking matte surface. It holds its shape and it wrinkles in a way that reads lived in instead of courtesy shine. So Martha's authority can look severe and intentional at the beginning, and by the end, the fabric itself can show fatigue and handling. It becomes a visual record of the night. The faux fur coat idea. I'm also considering a faux fur coat for Martha. And yes, it's partly because she's not afraid of controversy. She has the kind of privilege that lets her wear something polarizing and still be invited to the party. A fur-like statement reads as money, entitlement, and willingness to take up space. And it can also function practically. It's something she can fling over furniture as the night gets uglier, like a queen dropping her cape. Nick, youthful, modern, but still trying to belong. Nick is the clean, upwardly mobile version of academic masculinity. He's newer, sharper, and dressed like his career is watching him. So I'm considering putting him in a cardigan sweater instead of a coat, but still with a necktie. That combination says modern and youthful, but still I understand the dress code. It's that early 60s crossroads. A little softer, a little sportier, but not casual in a way that would read wrong for the setting. George and Nick, the yin-yang tie concept. One design choice I'm excited about is using their ties as a quiet visual argument. George gets a blue tie with yellow polka dots. Nick gets a yellow tie with blue stripes. It's a yin-yang idea. Each one contains a dot of the other, but the patterns also contrast personality. So George is stoic and straight-edged, but his tie has dots, something less linear, like chaos waiting underneath. Nick is rounded and modern, but his tie has lines, and he's still trying to stay structured and in control. And it fits the bigger historical vibe I'm aiming for, which is the play lives right at that transition point where 1950s constraint is still in charge, but 1960s loosens and is knocking on the door. The night's costume progression. A major research takeaway is that nobody changes into new clothes. The drama comes from how long they stayed in the same clothes. So my plan is visual degradation. Instead, step by step, Martha loses a shoe, then both shoes. Her blouse gets unbuttoned. By the end, she has a run in her stocking. Nick's cardigan comes off. His tie loosens. When his shoes come off, we see a hole in one of his socks. Like, the perfect package is literally just. George is the most trapped in late 50s academic styling, so he stays in that conservative structure longer. I'm considering a vest for him, slightly mismatched, because it reads like he once cared deeply about looking correct, and now he's running on fumes. His deterioration should read as pressure and exhaustion, not comedy. Why this research mattered to me. The big lesson for me is that research doesn't kill creativity. It gives creativity a spine. It replaces vague period vibes with specific evidence. Silhouette, fabric, behavior, accessories, grooming norms, and what people wore to signal class and respectability. And once I had that, character choices got easier. Not easier like simple, easier like supported, easier. Like I can defend why Honey was giving gloves, or why Martha's dress is black crepe, or why Nick's look is slightly more modern, and why George clings to structure even when it's clearly failing him. So in closing, that's where I am right now. Research complete, designs starting to lock in, and costumes aimed at showing control slipping in real time. I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone else pulled from their research, especially any details you found that surprised you or completely changed your first instincts. Thanks.